Hello, this is Viste, and this is my tutorial on how to make a track in Blender for the Karters 2 Turbocharged. I'll be going over pretty much everything I can think of. I'll most likely be breaking it up into different videos, just for ease of access, I guess, because no one really wants to watch a 4-hour video. So, I'm just going to get right into it. We have a cube. We don't need to delete it. This is absolutely fine for what we want to do. The first thing I'm going to tell you about is camera controls. So obviously, holding down middle mouse button allows us to, rotate in and out. If you hold Shift, you can use middle mouse to move around, and that's pretty much everything you need to know, really. Um, One thing, if you're later on trying to focus on something, pressing dot on numpad focuses on a specific object and makes the camera much more accurate around that one piece. So, we'd highly recommend learning just even if it's just the dot, and then being able to rotate around it is going to help you out a lot. Another couple of keybinds are 1, 3, and 7 on the number pad. This gives you different views from a perfect angle. 7 is top down. So if you can see, if I kind of move the camera around, I just literally go on a top plane. Again from the side and a different angle from the side. So these three are really good just to be able to quickly see different angles of your track, or if you're trying to do something accurately with these lines, being able to move it, you know, exactly where you want it to be. So that's that. 137 on the numpad. Now, in order to actually start making our track, we're going to zoom all the way out until we get to this kind of stage. What we're going to do is click on our cube and press S to scale. Now, once we hit S, we'll see this little arrow, and we can see we can make the cube bigger or smaller. Now, I'm going to hit 7, and I've actually eyeballed it perfectly, but we want our road to be 4x4. This is kind of a good size I've figured out, in order to be able to like drift around corners nicely without having to U-turn all the time. It gives us enough room to be able to move around and kind of be a little bit more reckless without, having so much that there's no point kind of exploring other areas of the track. So 4x4 is what we want the road to be. But to start off with, we're going to want to make the cube 6x6. This is because we want to include our walls in this mesh as well, and our walls are going to be 1 cube thick on either side. Now, we have a massive cube. We don't need our floor to be 4 cubes deep. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit scale again, but this time we're going to hit Z, and this is going to change the height of our cube. So we're going to hit 1 on the numpad to get this view. We're going to move it, and we're going to change the scale, again using S and then Z, to be roughly a cube thick. Now, we don't want the road to be like a plane. We don't want it to be like just a slither like paper. We want it to be thick. This is because it helps with identifying collisions, and just avoiding any problems when it comes to Unity, because sometimes really thin planes will not render properly within Unity, and then it's a whole issue. So try and have everything have a little bit of thickness in it in some way or another, just so it, properly registers it. There we go. So we've now got a 6x6x1 cube. This is the height and kind of dimensions we're going to use. Now, another keybind is tab. This is going to put us in edit mode, and this will allow us to interact with the points. We can see we can move things around. Scale. No, we can't. If we were to have like a face, we could scale that face to be smaller or larger. This just allows us to work with the mesh we're using. Now, all we're going to want to do is use bird's eye view, zoom in, and hit Control R. Now, as we move our mouse around, we'll see yellow lines appear. And what this does is this adds an extra edge onto our mesh. So instead of having just the basic, 1 on each side, we can now have 1 in the middle, for example. And this just gives us a little bit more control. But what we're going to want to do is, again, hit 7. Just undo that. We're going to want to create one of these lines. We're going to drag it, and we're going to place it roughly a cube away, or a square away, from the edge. So you can see it's these like thicker lines. You can see there's, 1 distance between the line and the edge. And we're going to want to do the same on the other side. Now, it doesn't have to be like absolutely exact, but the closer it is, the better. I'm just going to do it again. There we go. Now, the main reason I'm doing this is I'm planning on having these two edges be walls. So you can see we have our road, we have walls either side of it. That's what that's for. Before we do that, though, we want to do something very important. And trust me, if you do this now instead of even 5 minutes from now, it's going to save you so much time. What we're going to want to do is separate the road from the walls. And we can do this by going inside the cube. There we go. And we can see it's hollow. One thing we need to do first is grab all of these edges, and we're going to hold shift as we grab these. And we're going to hit F on our keyboard. F, flamingo, F. And it's going to fill in that, that face though. And we're going to do the same here. There we go. Now, the reason I'm doing this is before then, it would essentially be a kind of like a cardboard box with the sides missing. We just want to make sure that the floor is a complete cube that we can then work with, as opposed to being hollow through the middle with, holes on either side. So again, we're just going to fill these in, and then we're going to grab all of the faces of this middle cube. There we go. So if we zoom out, we can see we've grabbed every side of that. And we're going to hit P on our keyboard and hit selection. This means all of the faces we've just picked will now be separated into cube 1. Here we go. We can see we've created a different mesh. If I hide this, you'll see we're just left with the walls. So we're just going to name this floor. And we're going to name the original, which we can now see, again, is these two sides. We're just going to name this wall. And the final step here is now, obviously, these walls are hollow. We're just going to want to grab these two edges and fill them in. There we go. So now we've got two walls and a floor. This is important because when we go into Unity and we want to distinguish what's a floor and what's a wall, if we do not do this step, the entire track will be considered one mesh, which means we can only assign one kind of collider to it. However, if we do this, we can have a floor collider and we can have a wall collider. So now all we need to do is make the walls taller so we actually have walls and not just a larger road. So we're going to hit 1 on our keyboard. There we go. We get the side view. And I would recommend making your walls 4 squares high. There we go. Now you'll notice instead of extruding with E, which is what I'm using by the way here, you extrude using E on your keyboard. You just select the faces you want to use and you extrude. And this is how you create your track. Instead of just doing it like that, I'm doing it one at a time. 1 square. And I would very highly recommend you do this. The reason for this is, if we look at this, I have 4 different faces I can now use on each side. So if I just want to extrude this face, I have the ability to do that. Whereas if I was just to go, okay, I want it to be 4 blocks tall, let me just make it, there we go. I now just have one face to work with. I can't have these specific, controls necessarily. I still could implement them by doing edge loops, but it's just not as efficient. It's not as tidy, and it's just going to cause issues later on. So, like I say, I would highly recommend every time you extrude, just doing it 1 square at a time. There we go. So, like I said, we now have these 4 edges, and this is really helpful because if later on, let's say you want to make a ramp on one of the walls, you can now do that. You can jump, you can land on this bit. You wouldn't be able to do that any other way. Well, you could, just not as easily. There we go. So, we've got a starting line, we've got a floor, we've got walls. Now we're going to start extending it and actually building our track. This has all been set up, but we can actually start working with it now. So if we want to be able to work with both our floor and the wall at the same time, we're going to hold shift in object mode and just click on both of these and then hit tab. And you can see we now can work with the floor and the walls at the same time. We are going to select all of the faces, again by holding shift and clicking on them. Hitting Z, no, not Z, sorry, 7. I'm actually going to go for this set of walls even. There we go. And again, we're just going to extrude 1 face 1 square at a time. Excuse me. There we go. So now we've created a slightly longer road, but you can see we have all of these squares we can work with now. So if we wanted to create windows or, have specific, blocks out, it's a lot easier to be able to do that. This is why I do one square at a time. What if we want to make a right turn, for example? We want to turn right, but we've got a wall in the way. What we can do is we can select this floor and the wall that we're not turning into, and we can just do exactly the same thing. We can extrude 4 times. So you'll now see, if I were to want to go, towards the right, I'd be able to extrude, and I can now drive across there. We haven't got a wall in the way. We're going to take this wall, here we go, and we want it to sort of bend around the track. Otherwise, we just drive straight off. So we're going to extrude one more time, grab all of these squares again, and still making sure we're doing one square at a time. We're just going to extrude. There we go. There we go. So now we've got our first right turn. And all we need to do from now is just, again, grab all of these faces. Oh my god. There we go. And extrude again. However many times you want. I try and do everything in blocks of 4. Like I say, this is just a formula I've worked out. It just keeps the track a nice width. You're not having really tight turns anywhere. You have enough room to work with. There we go. So we've got a right turn. Now, let's say I want to make a ramp. All we're going to do, exactly the same, is we're going to extrude once, but this time we're going to hit 1 on our keyboard, or 3, depending on which way you've got so far. And we're going to want to hit this little tab on the left, or we can hit G, but I prefer hitting the icon on the left. And we're just going to move this upwards. And you can see we've already got a ramp here, but the walls have also moved up with it. This means that you're constantly maintaining that 4 block high wall without accidentally jumping over it at any point. Now, in terms of the steepness of the ramp, I would not suggest anything more than a 1-to-1 ratio. You can see we go 1 square to the right and then 1 square up. Anything more than this, you might be able to drive up, but it becomes a little bit risky. 1-to-1 works really nicely in the Karters. You do, drive up it nicely. There's no unexpected mechanics or physics. And you get a decent height out of it. If you want to be safe, I'd recommend actually doing half a square. So, a 1-to-1/2 ratio. Yeah, you can go as steep as this, and that'll be fine. So again, we're just going to go 1 forwards, 1 up. We're just going to maintain this 1 block at a time strategy. Because this also lets you change the steepness of it. Let's say I want to have the last part of that ramp be a little bit, rounded off. We can do that. But we're not going to in this instance. We're going to make it, there we go, another 1 higher. And if we want it to stop being a ramp, it is as simple as just extruding, as we have been. And again, this is just by hitting E on your keyboard when you have selected faces, and it lets you bring out an extrusion of that. Cool. So now we can just carry on, again, just go in a straight line. So we're just going to do another set of 4. There we go. Now we want a right turn. So again, we just deselect the wall we're turning into. Do another 4 extrusions. The reason I'm doing another 4 is if we were to only do 3, for example, the road width now has become 3, which is fine if that's what you're wanting to do, but, we just want to make sure we have another 4 faces we can then pull out from that don't go into the wall. At a moment though, I didn't know if I hit record or not, and I was panicking. Alright, there we go. I have though. That's good. And again, we're just going to extrude our wall across this length. There we go. So we've now created, well, a first right turn, a ramp, and then another right turn. Now, let's say we wanted to create a shortcut, right? Now, obviously, there's different ways you can approach this. One shortcut I really like to do is a window shortcut. This is featured in many of my tracks many times. So all this is just cutting a hole in a wall, jumping through it to access a part of the track that you either wouldn't normally be able to, or just to skip ahead of a turn. So it's really quite simple. All we need to do is, let's say we come off this ramp. I'm going to just eyeball this and say that, hey, maybe this window, I reckon we can jump through that. This might require a bit of testing, but with the one-to-one, I'm pretty sure we can make this kind of angle. I don't think we'd be able to make the top row by any means because, we're driving up, but then suddenly going up higher than we were. So I think try and keep it along this kind of path. Anyway, I think it's this window, so we'll go with it. But again, I can put it into Unity, test it, come back, and then change what window it is. So we're just going to delete that face, and we're going to delete the one on the other side of that. So we can now see through that window. And the only issue with it at the minute is you can see it's hollow. If we jump through this but don't quite make this window or we hit the wall, we're going to fall into here and get stuck. Awful. Now, using the same method we used earlier, we are going to fill, using F, the gap between these edges. There we go. And you can now see we have a tunnel. Now, this is great, but we're still not done because this is still considered part of the wall. If we were to drive on this and we've got a wall collider on it, we're going to slide across it. We're not going to be able to have any control as such. We're going to lose reserves. Not great if you're trying to do a shortcut and you're losing speed. So what we're going to want to do is make this a floor as well. Now we can do this, same method as earlier, by hitting P and then selection. Now, we can now see if we get rid of the wall, this is not considered part of the wall anymore, it is its own thing. So we're just going to name this floor bracket shortcut. Now, I mentioned earlier about not liking planes. This is because, again, Unity doesn't necessarily render them properly all the time. So what I would very highly recommend is choosing this, selecting that face, and extruding even a tiny bit, just like that. And this is just going to give it that thickness to make it properly recognized in Unity and just make it easier to detect collisions against it. So again, enabling the wall. There we go. We have made our first shortcut. Now, obviously, we jump through this and we just fall into the void because we haven't got a track here. So we are just going to grab both the wall and the floor and just make a U-turn here. There we go. So again, dragging out 4. And then doing a 5th one just for the wall so we can bend around it. Oh, okay. So sometimes you're going to extrude and you're going to have this effect where you're actually able to place it wherever you want. If this happens, all you need to do is hit Z, X, or Y on your keyboard. In this case, we want to hit Y. And this is going to tie that extrusion to the Y axis, essentially. If we do it to X, we can see it moves left and right. You can't really at this angle, but it is moving now. But we want to hit it to Y, and again, just make it 1 square long. There we go. I'm just going to finish off that wall. There we go. And now we can just grab all of these and extrude these along a couple of times. Right, we can do this. I'm just trying to picture this in my head. Once more. There we go. Now, I'm just planning ahead. I want there to be a wall across this bit. And we can see we have 4 squares left for the road. And maintaining the idea of having, a 4-block wide road at all times, we're going to stop extruding the wall here. And we're just going to carry on extruding our floor 4 times. There we go. And now we can just grab this wall and do exactly the same thing, extrude 4 times. Grabbing this floor as well. There we go. So now, and maybe it's been 20 minutes, but I've been explaining a lot and doing things unnecessarily. We already have a right turn and maybe about 5 seconds of the track. Now, based on that, it's not going to then take like 10 hours to do a 2-minute track or whatever. This is just something you're naturally going to get much quicker at as you go along. This would normally take me about maybe like 6 minutes normally if I'm not explaining, I'm just really going for it. So, it's quite an efficient way to create a track. And it's one that, I've enjoyed using. Okay, so I'm going to try and introduce a new concept here. There we go. I'm going to try and introduce curved walls. So I'm going to do this. No, not curved walls, sorry, curved floors. Because obviously not everyone's going to want a really boxy track like this. So I'm just going to try and demonstrate how to do that and the introduction of dissolving edges. So we're just going to do 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to grab these. All right. So let's say I don't want this to be a complete like right angle. I want there to be kind of a smooth curve to it. We're going to do something called beveling. And we do this by holding Control B while selecting any edge. However, if I do this on this one in particular, Control B, you can see we've got a bevel, but we are limited to in between these two lines either side. You can see the bevel stops at these two. And this is fine, but it doesn't really change that much with the track. It's kind of a curve there, but if you compare that to how it was, it just adds a little bit more, leeway. So if you want to have a stronger curve or have one where it's unrestricted, what we want to do is get rid of these edges. Now, a lot of people might try and just delete these, but then you have this issue. You've got a hollow floor, which again on the surface isn't an issue, but then you can't bevel anything. What I would very much recommend instead is dissolving edges. And this just gets rid of them, but it doesn't get rid of the face behind it. Now, if I bevel, I may still have the same issue. Yep, I do. You can see I'm still connected to these two edges. So I'm going to grab these as well, dissolve them. And if I look underneath, I've got the same issue. I'm just going to dissolve these edges as well. There we go. So now you'll see if I try and bevel this turn, there we go. It's much more curved. Now, we've got quite a thick road here now. So we're just going to bevel this side as well. And we can use exactly the same method of dissolving these edges here. I've done the wrong ones. Is that right? Yes. Dissolve edges. There we go. Now we can grab this, bevel, and there you go. You can now see I've created a curved road. It's still quite thick. You can obviously just change the thickness of the road leading up to it if you want it to be because naturally like the thickness of it does increase slightly, just because of the curves involved. It's additive as opposed to destructive as far as I know. In some cases, if you do it on the inside, it is anyway. So I'm just gonna redo that. Cool. But yeah, we have a curved road. So now the issue is trying to do it with a wall. So we're going to grab this wall. I'm going to do these one at a time, just for simplicity. So again, I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3. Now I'm actually going to cut into the road a little bit here. And I'm going to just grab these. And do the same there. Alright, so let's say I want to curve this wall. Again, same issue. I could do this, but then I don't get that much of a bevel out of it because we've got these. So I'm going to do a new shortcut, which is holding Alt. And this selects an entire loop, essentially. You can do this with a lot of things, but it just kind of selects a larger selection at once. And if you hold Shift while doing this, you can select multiple of these at once, dissolve them, grab this, and bevel. There we go. Now, we want to be sensible. Obviously, that's a bit much. But if we just bevel it more or less to where it should be, there we go. You can now see the wall curves with the road. The hard part is doing it with the outside wall. I will admit, last time I tried to do this tutorial, I did fumble this bit a tiny bit. So I do apologize if this goes wrong. And it might be that I genuinely just won't be able to show you how to do this today. Um, hopefully I can. Okay, actually, you know what? I would recommend, for once, actually cutting into the road a little bit here. So I'm just trying to get the length of this. There's not really any faster way to do it. There we go. So again, we can just grab the edges here. And dissolve them. And we can just bevel this. Oh, there we go. I actually did it this time. Marvelous. Okay, cool. You can see that we've now created a curved wall across it. And that works pretty well. I think I messed up the floor last time. I got like the proportions wrong and that made it really awkward for the wall. But there we go. It's exactly the same as the inner wall. You just bevel that inside corner and then you get a curve. Now you can do the entire track like this if you want. It's up to you whether you want sort of a blocky or a curved track. It's much faster to do a block based one where it's very right angle focused. But then I guess there's something more natural about the curved roads. That's how to do that. So again, it's Control B to do a bevel when you're in edit mode and you've actually selected an edge to do that with. You use Alt and then clicking on the edge to get the whole loop of it. And that is pretty much it for that section. Yeah, dissolving edges. The thing with dissolving edges is you can only really do it on faces that on edges that aren't sort of controlling the shape of the face or mesh. And that's a really awkward way of describing it, but I think I'll be able to demonstrate it pretty nicely here. If I dissolve, let's say, let's take this for example. If I were to dissolve this edge right here, oh no, it's got rid of it, and this is now hollow. That's because this edge is telling, essentially this edge how far along it needs to go. Whereas if I were to get rid of this one, dissolve edge, it doesn't really change anything. And that's because this edge and this edge, they still communicate with each other and it's still got that mesh between it. This just kind of reinforced that. Whereas this one, it's it just creates a gap essentially. So try and dissolve edges on flat meshes essentially, or flat faces. That's the best way I can describe it, just not on corners. I explained that really poorly, so I apologize for that, but it's quite a weird concept to try and get your head around. Cool. So we've actually got a pretty decent setup here for now. So I'm probably gonna export this and just put this in Unity, and I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll be able to test it. So we're gonna save this demo track 2 because my first one went awfully. There we go, and then we've saved it. We want to then export it as a DAE file. This works really nicely within Unity. This is what I use. There we go, and we're now going to open up Unity. We're going to find that file we just exported. We're going to take me a second. There we go, and we can drag that in. Now, I mentioned earlier about scaling this up once we got inside Unity. I think so, I did. If I go here, a good way to see if this is wide enough is go to the mod track data variant and just change the start positions to be here. And yeah, we can immediately see that the track just isn't wide enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the demo track that we've just imported, and up here where it says scale factor, I'm going to change this to a 2. And this is now twice as large. This is why I don't worry too much about the scaling in Blender, because we can do a lot of that within Unity. But it is just so important to keep the scaling consistent within Blender. Again, for this reason, because I've kept this 4x4, this still kind of works. There's not any really awkwardly, shrunk or massive areas. It's all relative. I should probably mention this now. If you don't know how to access these tools, this is all within the Discord, which I will probably link in the description. And there's a mods creation channel where I believe there's an FAQ that lets you download the Unity tool preset that gives you all of these tools that you need to actually create a track. So, starting positions are here, but as you can see, if I grab these kind of fall through the floor, and this tells us we don't have a floor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to demo track up here in our hierarchy, and we're actually going to right click on this, go to prefab and unpack, and this will let us just delete, move, interact with all of the objects within this, essentially. So we're going to get rid of the light, we're going to get rid of the camera, we don't need either of them. And we're going to select our three meshes, our floor, the floor of the shortcut, and the wall. And I'm going to move my camera real quick. There we go. We have a add component on the right here. So we're just going to click on this and then mesh collider. This gives a physical property to all of our meshes within the scene. We are then going to want to hit layer, ground collider. This will make everything in the scene a ground, something that we can actually drive on. It acts like a road. Downside is we have a wall. We don't want that to be a ground. So we're going to just change that to a wall collider. So now that's been done, if we go over to our starting positions, you can see that as we move this, they are attached to the floor now. That's great. That means that the floor is going to work as intended. We're not going to fall through it. We have a floor. We have a road, which is great. Last thing we want to do is just grab a finish line boundary. And again, with the hotkey of Control, Shift, and F, we can move that to be wherever our camera is and pointing in a direction of our camera. There we go. We want to make sure that this blue arrow is pointing forwards when it says local up here. If it says global, it's probably going to face this way. But we just want to make sure that when it says local, the blue arrow is facing this way. This tells us what direction we need to drive through the finish map. So that is all that is. That is everything we need to do. We can now test this. So we're going to go up to here, Pixel Tools, Package Exporter. There we go. We're going to create a new mod. There we go. We're going to name this Demo Track 2 Vista. Put whatever your name is, your username after it. This is because we want all of these names to be unique. And if you put your name after it, that's going to automatically make it unique. No one else is going to use your name, hopefully. We're then going to name our track. We're going to make it Demo Track 2. We're going to call ourselves whatever we want to be called. We're going to change the tag here to tracks. And we're going to go over to, let me just check my password. Does it come up? It does not. Marvelous. We're going to go over to export. Now, we need to set a password. I'll do this last. Aside from that, we don't need to fiddle with mod version or changelog yet. But what we do need to do is go down to tracks here. And we're going to click on demo track or whatever the track is that you've created. As much as you can, follow the online guide, which is within the Discord server, to actually set up all of this. I don't want to go over it too much because a lot of this is about Blender. This is more just about how to test your track. Alternatively, look at Karters' guide. Absolutely incredible video series that helped me so much as well with learning. And that is very much more what to do within Unity. I'll still cover most of it here, but I believe they go much more in depth, including how to actually, create these tracks, also in the assets down here. Anyway, we're going to export this. No, we can't. We have to have a password. I'm going to make a password. You are not going to see the password because that kind of defeats the point. I'm going to call it that. There we go. Export. There we go. Save the scene. It's going to take a couple of seconds, especially if it's been the first time you're exporting it, but for the most part, it should be fine. There we go. Almost done. There we go. This should automatically go in your mod folder. If not, drag it into your mod folder. This will be found in Program Files 86, Steam, Steam Apps, Common, the Karters 2 Turbocharged mods. Just drag it in there, and you will then be able to test it. So, let's close this, open up the Karters, and give it a whirl. Alright, so we're in game, and we're just about to test the track that we've just made. So we're going to go in, and we're just going to see if, like I say, if any of the windows, if the window shortcut we've made is right. All right, let's have a look. There we go. Okay, so we jumped through it. We jumped a little bit higher there. I'm going to go through it again just to see if that's a regular occurrence or whether it was just the timing of it that was wrong. Okay, there we go. So we can actually jump through that pretty comfortably now. I'm just going to go through this a couple of times while I talk about the last things. So yeah, this is about 10 seconds worth of track, what we've done today. About 7 if you take the shortcut. And that would probably take me about 6 minutes. And this is only, I mean, what I've done here is only my third track. I've done 2 other tracks aside from this. I know this video is basically 40 minutes long, maybe 30 if I've edited it down. That's going to be edited out. But yeah, I mean, this maybe for your first time, this should take around 20 minutes, assuming nothing goes wrong, and maybe like 10 on your second time, and then maybe 5 on your third. You know, it's a process that becomes very natural very quickly. So if you find yourself struggling with it, don't worry. Even after you make your first track, things will be so much faster, and I can say from experience that is the case. So I hope this has helped. If you have any questions at all, let me know in the comments. I'll help out as best as I can, or reach out to me on Discord, and I can even maybe talk to you with like footage and image examples of things. Like I said, I'll be linking a Discord link to the server, and then you can find me in there. I'm really active in there, so you'll probably just see me even if you open up a random channel. Yeah, that is everything. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Hopefully this has helped you in some way. If not, maybe one of the next tutorials will, because this is a series. This is not all I'm going to be showing you. This is just absolute basics of how to make a track. Thank you. See you soon.